Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 reasons that the shadow causes you to sabotage your goals and how to resolve each of those 5 reasons at the root. Now, oftentimes when we're dealing with patterns that cause us to stand in the way of our goals and sabotage ourselves, it can just look like laziness and lack of motivation. And it might even feel like, why am I trying to mess myself over this way? I value this goal that I have and I know what to do, but I just don't seem to be doing it. The reality is that there is no such thing as true self-sabotage. Everything that you do is always trying to benefit you in some way. And that includes when you stand in the way of the goals that you value so much. It's just that there are parts of yourself that you're unconscious to that are trying to benefit you in ways that run counter to your conscious goals. And those unconscious parts of you that are holding you back reside in the shadow. And the shadow is your psychological blind spot. So when parts of yourself end up in the shadow, you go unconscious to them. And when they're in the shadow, they become autonomous from your conscious personality. And so your conscious personality is the part of you that you call me or I. And these parts of yourself, these aspects that are in the shadow, they operate autonomously from the part of you that you call me or I. So in the same way that your conscious personality has its own agendas, each of your shadow aspects have their own agendas. And every single one of these agendas is meant to serve you or protect you in some way. It's just that if you have an agenda to, let's say, start your own business, but this other aspect has an agenda to stay safe and invisible, then those two ways of benefiting you are going to be in a bit of a tug of war. And in these instances, it can really feel like you're sabotaging yourself for no good reason and that you're just trying to mess yourself over. But that isn't true at all. And this is a really common problem that so many of the people that I've worked with over the years have struggled with. And so very soon I'm going to be hosting a live workshop where I help people resolve this issue at the root. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But right now, I want to share with you a metaphor to help you understand how the shadow leads you to self-sabotage and how if you are self-sabotaging or you're procrastinating, that the issue isn't willpower, it's something that's much deeper than that. So I want you to imagine that your body is a car and you're the driver of that car. So as you're driving along, you have a certain goal about where you want to get to in your car. And then you come to a fork in the road and you want to take a right turn. But when you go to turn right, the car just won't turn. You end up turning left instead, or you end up just staying stuck in place. Or maybe the vehicle even just tries to turn itself around altogether. And it can really feel like, from your perspective as the driver of that vehicle, oh no, I just don't have the willpower to make myself turn right. Why can't I just force the car in that direction? But unbeknownst to you as the driver of the vehicle, there are also 10 other steering wheels in the trunk of the car manned by 10 aspects of yourself that are unconscious to you, your shadow aspects. And one shadow aspect wants to turn left because it feels like turning right is unsafe, and another aspect wants to go straight because there's some other goal or agenda like, oh, if we go straight, then that means that we're going to connect with more people. And then the part of you that wants to turn around just wants to stay in the comfort zone. And so each of these 10 shadow aspects that are there in the trunk of the car are all trying to go in their own direction. So of course, when you try to turn right, it becomes this really difficult thing and you run into tons of resistance. And that's because the conscious part of you, that's only one steering wheel, where your shadow aspects each have their own steering wheel for the vehicle that is your body. And this can feel so frustrating because chances are the goal you're trying to reach is something very important to you. And it seems like it shouldn't be that hard to take a right turn to go towards that goal, and yet it becomes so difficult. Now, just really quick, if all of this is resonating with you, I wanted to mention I'm going to be having a free live workshop on Saturday, May 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it's called Shadow Work, Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage. And in there, I'm going to teach you how to resolve the deeper root cause reasons for self-sabotage. And so if you want to register, go ahead and click the link down below in the description box and just put in your name and your email address, and you'll get an invite to the live workshop. And if you can't make it on that day, that's no problem either. I'm also going to be sending out a replay to everybody who signs up. But I want to share with you another metaphor that's going to help you humanize the parts of you that are in the shadow. Right now, it might just seem like they're tricksters trying to throw you off your game or trying to mess you over, but that is absolutely not the case. Remember, each one of these shadow aspects is 100% you. It is just a part of you that you've gone unconscious to, and it is trying really hard to serve you very much. So it has a fundamental self-interest in the same way that you have a fundamental self-interest, and because it is you, it has an interest to serve you. So if you try to fight against these shadow aspects and the resistances they throw up, they just end up putting more resistance in on top of that. So you really have to come to know how they're actually trying to serve you by holding you back. So in this metaphor, I want you to imagine that you're the president of a company, and the president is your conscious personality, the part of yourself that you call me or I. And whenever the president of the company has a goal or a vision for the company, and these are your conscious goals, it brings it forth in front of the board of directors. And each member of the board of directors is one of your shadow aspects. And each one of these members of your board of directors, your shadow aspects, have their own wisdom and boundaries and wants and needs separate from the wisdom, boundaries, wants, and needs of the conscious personality, the president of the board. And so let's say that you, as the president of the board of directors, have some kind of goal. Let's say that you want to start your own business, and you come in front of the board of directors and you share this idea. And this analogizes to real life, where you come up with a new idea and you start trying to move in that direction. And let's say that you run into resistance. You start procrastinating and you start self-sabotaging. Well, if we take that back into the metaphor, what's actually happening there is that that's one or more of the members of your board of directors posing an objection to you. And it's never posing that objection for no good reason. Keep in mind, each shadow aspect is a valued member of your board and is fundamentally trustworthy to serve your interests. And so let's say that you have the goal to start your own business, and then one of your aspects poses an objection because maybe they're afraid of the exposure that having a new business would bring. In that case, what you would have to do as the president of the personalities, you'd have to figure out what's the root cause of that fear and figure out ways to resolve it. And that way, that aspect can rescind its objection and get on board with your conscious goals. Or perhaps there's something misaligned with that goal. Maybe it's not really what you want. In that case, another shadow aspect might object to it. And in that case, you would actually have to tweak your conscious goals in order to be able to get that aspect on board. And the goal is to get all of your aspects on board while moving in the direction of your goals. And if it's the case that there's still objections and parts of you that are holding you back, what's going to happen is that you're just going to be fighting against yourself, and you're going to stay stuck in place. And so one of the most important things you can do in order to achieve your goals is to start listening to your shadow. Start trying to understand these parts of you that are holding you back. And don't try to fight against them. Instead, try to work with them to move in the direction of your goals. And that starts with trusting that if they are sabotaging you, there is a good reason why they're doing it. And if we get really precise and really granular, there can be thousands of different really good reasons why your shadow aspects are sabotaging you. What I found in my time doing shadow work and working with clients to help them go through their own shadow work process is that there are really 5 umbrella reasons why your shadow sabotages your goals. And so I'm going to share with you each of those 5 reasons, and I'm also going to share with you some examples. And so the first and most difficult reason that your shadow could be holding you back from your goals is because your goals are misaligned with what it is that you really want. So let's say, for example, that Jenny decides to go into the family business because that's just what's expected of her, and she wants to make sure that she keeps her family happy and to stay connected with her family. But deeper down, part of her, an unconscious part of her, knows that that's not really what she wants. She actually wants to be an architect instead. And so what happens then is that that shadow aspect that actually knows what she wants starts sabotaging her conscious goals to go into the family business. And maybe she starts sabotaging herself. Maybe she ends up causing issues between her and her family in order to sabotage things. And so in that case, what Jenny would have to do is she would actually have to change her goals to be more in alignment with what it is that she really truly wants, which is to be an architect. And that's why this reason for self-sabotage is the most difficult one, because you actually have to change your goals that you might be quite attached to in order to bring yourself into alignment with what I call the truest, deepest will. And that's just another way of saying what it is that you really truly want in your heart of hearts. Now, the second umbrella reason why your shadow might be sabotaging your goals is because you have limiting beliefs. And limiting beliefs can be quite sneaky. Sometimes it can be just things that we're taking for granted to be true that don't happen to be true. Let's say, for example, that Mark tends to just take for granted that it's super hard and almost impossible to start the gardening business that he wants. And he just takes that for granted. It's unexamined. But if he actually seeks out more information, he can find other people that have been successful that same exact way. But those aren't the only kind of limiting beliefs. We also have what I call functional limiting beliefs. And these are limiting beliefs that are meant to protect or serve us in some way. So let's say that Lila has an unexamined limiting belief that anything that she's capable of doing, she's responsible for doing. So every time she's capable of something, she has to do that thing. And then she develops a functional limiting belief to cope with that by believing that she's not good enough and that she can't become good enough, like that she's just not really good at anything. And the reality is that if Lila acknowledged to herself that she was good at things and had talents, then she would feel very responsible for having to do those things. And that would be a lot of burden and a lot of pressure. And so what she would actually have to do is she would have to let go of that unexamined limiting belief that she's responsible for doing everything that she's good at. That way she could believe that she's good at some things. And she could let go of the limiting belief that she's not good enough and that she doesn't have any talents. So that's umbrella reason number 2. Umbrella reason number 3 that your shadow aspect might be holding you back from your goals is because of trying to avoid some uncomfortable, intense, unwanted feeling states. And this is a really common culprit for self-sabotage because we can unconsciously try to avoid all sorts of feeling states by keeping ourselves in our comfort zone. For example, let's say that Jamal wants to be a public speaker, but in his childhood, he dealt with public embarrassment and, all the kids in class used to make fun of him. And that's something that he doesn't think about that often. It's not something that bothers him now, but he finds that when he starts to work on his public speaking business, he just gets suddenly very tired and he starts avoiding doing the work. Or he finds himself skipping out on different opportunities to speak publicly. And what's going on there is that one of his shadow aspects that bore the brunt of the trauma of being publicly ostracized and humiliated is they are trying to prevent him from being in a public situation where all eyes are on him. And so because that part of him, that vulnerable part of him, is afraid of a repeat of the public humiliation from childhood, it holds him back in his current goals. And so what he would have to do is he would actually have to become conscious of that part of himself and to process the unprocessed feelings. And to also work it out to where if something like that did happen, that he would be quite kind to himself and that he would be able to seek support elsewhere. Now, umbrella reason number 4 is really the crux of all of the other reasons combined. And so all of these could even be boiled down just into the reason number 4, which is that you don't trust yourself. So in this case, your shadow aspects are sabotaging your conscious goals because they don't trust you as the conscious personality. And so I want you to imagine yourself as 2 beings in one. And let's say that you are like a horse and the rider that rides the horse. And in order for you to move in the direction of your goal, you actually have to get the rider and the horse on the same page, which means that the rider has to earn the horse's trust. But let's say that you're operating outside of your truest, deepest will. Let's say that you're misaligned in some way. Let's say that you're being extra hard on yourself, or you're not meeting your needs, or you're not honoring your boundaries. In this case, you're proving yourself not a trustworthy leader to yourself. And what will happen is that you will rebel from your own lead. And so in this, you have to trust yourself to stay in alignment. You have to trust yourself to bring your beliefs into alignment and to not have punitive mindsets. You have to trust yourself to be able to handle difficult emotions. You have to trust yourself to be able to meet your needs and honor your boundaries. And so an example of someone who sabotages themselves due to lack of self-trust is, let's say that Emma wants to start going to the gym, but Emma is not really a gym going person, but she's like, I'm going to go to the gym every single day. And so what happens is that she rebels from herself. She doesn't trust her own lead. She doesn't listen to herself because she hasn't earned her own trust and respect. And so that's when our shadow aspects go rogue. They try to stage a coup and they try to take over because we as the conscious personality are not doing a great job with our executive function and self-leadership. Now, the 5th umbrella reason why your shadow might be sabotaging your conscious goals is because your needs are unmet. Or at the very least, your needs are being met in the status quo, but you don't have plans for how your needs are going to be met in your long-range vision of where you want to go to. For example, let's say that Sarah wants to make more money, and so she wants to start her own business to make more money. And right now, she doesn't have a lot of money, so she's having to live with roommates, and she's having to carpool to go to work. She's having to do her laundry in a public laundromat, and she's having to, work a job that she doesn't really like, but that's around a lot of other people. But let's say that she's the type of person that she doesn't really value social connection. She considers herself a loner. And in the status quo, because she doesn't make a lot of money, she's passively getting a lot of her connection needs met because everything she has to do is very public. She just doesn't have enough resources to do things alone. And connection with other human beings is a basic human need. And so there's a part of her that's unconscious to her that is aware of this need. And it knows that if Sarah meets her goal and becomes more financially free and she is successful in her business and makes a lot of money, what's going to happen is that she's going to move out and she's going to go live alone. She's going to have her own vehicle, so she's not going to be carpooling to go to work. She's not going to be doing her laundry in a public laundromat. She's going to have her own washer and dryer. And she's not going to work in a busy workplace where she has a built-in community. And so that part of her really values her meeting her connection needs. And so what's going to happen is that part of her is going to sabotage her conscious goals to be successful in her business and make more money. And it's going to keep her stuck in place. And so what she would actually have to do is she would have to incorporate her need for connection into her conscious goals, which would require her to change her identity to not being a loner, but to being somebody just like everybody else who needs connection. She would have to work through any resistances that she has to connection, and she would have to actively incorporate her connection needs into her conscious goals. Now, if you're starting to realize that your life is being shaped by unconscious forces that you don't yet see, that's exactly what I'm going to be helping you work through in my live workshop that's coming up on Saturday, May 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, I don't do live events very often, but in this free workshop, I'm going to be sharing with you step-by-step strategies and tools that you can use to become conscious of your self-sabotage patterns and to discover the deeper unconscious reason why those self-sabotage patterns are happening. And I'm also going to be sharing with you how to resolve the deeper root cause of these patterns. That way you can get out of your own way and finally reach the goals that you're looking to reach. So if you're interested in attending the live workshop on Saturday, May 16th, you can go ahead and register down below at the link in the description box. And even if you can't make it on the same day, I'm also going to be sending out a replay to everybody who signs up. And this free live workshop is called Shadow Work, Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage. It's on Saturday, May 16th from 1 p.m. Eastern to 2:15 p.m. Eastern, and I hope to see you there.